Okay, now that we've got a better idea or a better feel for the interface, let's just jump in and start to learn what some of these tools can do and some of the panels that can help you out. So if we've got Illustrator open, let's do a File, New, and again we're going to take a look at what's going on here. Inches is what I've set to. I'm going to go wide instead of tall. I'm going to do it just 8.5 by 11. If we have bleed, if anybody understands what bleed is when you look at a printed magazine and a picture runs all the way off the page, it's right to the edge, that has bleed on it. If there's nothing, there's the white paper and there's just text on it, there's no bleed on that page, only what goes off the page. So you can set up bleed margins so that you know that you can place something on the page so it bleeds off the page. We're not going to be as worried about bleed in Illustrator as concerned as we are in InDesign, but it's there for you, and I didn't happen to mention it the other time. Color modes. We breezed over this earlier, but didn't go into any depth. The color mode for what we're working on, we can be in CMYK or RGB. As we know, CMYK is for 4-color printing, which means cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. And RGB is for monitor or display only, and that is red, green, blue. Okay? Raster effects, if we're doing it in raster effects, we can tell it to render out different effects. And preview mode, pixel or overprint, we'll talk more about those later. But right now, I just want to make a new document. We're going to do some things. We're going to play around. You can follow along with me. You can just watch and then follow along again, whatever you feel more comfortable with. Again, these are not the exact same things that we're doing in the book, but they kind of follow along. And you might see something that I have done or I'm doing that's not, you read it in the book differently, and you're going to say, wait a minute, Eric, this doesn't make sense. Why is it this way in the book and this way? Again, there are so many ways to do things in any Adobe program that I'm trying to get you the best of everything. So I'm not doing, I hate to teach from a book. If you ask any of my students, I will assign the book as a reference and to help impact or embed with the information I'm teaching you, but it's not the exact same stuff because Adobe is going to teach stuff a little differently than I do, and that's great. That's getting more than one instructor from the deal here. So go ahead and follow along if you wish, but I'm going to make a brand new document here. So what I want to do is I want to go over basically some of the tools and what they do. So let's go ahead and find the rectangle tool, and if we click on the rectangle tool, you'll notice we have the rectangle tool, the rounded rectangle tool, the ellipse tool, the polygon, the star, and the flare. But what we're going to do right off the bat is we're just going to work with the rectangle tool. Now, if anyone has taken any other program that with Adobe, Photoshop, Illustrator, InDesign, you'll understand that all these tools work the same across the board, which is a nice, delightful thing. If you learn one Adobe program, the interface and a lot of the way the tools works the same in another Adobe program. So if all you've learned is Illustrator, when we get to Photoshop stuff, you'll and you've never opened Photoshop, you'll be like, wow, this interface looks just like Illustrator. A lot of these tools work similar. A lot of the things are very compatible here. So that's the whole idea. Adobe, it used to be back in the day when I first started learning this stuff, Illustrator version 2, Photoshop version 2.5. Photoshop looked one way, Illustrator looked another, PageMaker looked a different way, and right around Illustrator 6 or 7, Adobe said, you know what, this is stupid. Why don't we make everything the same so the interface looks the same, the panels look the same, tools are similar, so that when you learn one Adobe program, you can learn another one easy or easier, okay, than working from scratch. So I'm going to come in here, I'm going to grab my rectangle tool. Oh, before I do that, let's go up underneath Illustrator Preferences, and if you're on the PC, it's going to be File Preferences or Edit Preferences, but under Preferences, we're going to go to, let's go to, where is it? User interface, we already did that. Maybe not. I'm sorry. Where I'm thinking about Photoshop, where we're going to change the cursors precise. Yes, I'm sorry. So we're not going to worry about that, but let's just go to the rectangle tool. With the rectangle tool, notice right off the bat we are now in the rectangle tool. The toolbar by default is a fill of white and a stroke of black. We also have it up here in a fill of white, stroke of black. If we come down to our color panels, you're going to notice that we have a fill of white and stroke of black. Notice on here in the panel and down here on our toolbar, the fill is in the front, so whatever color we change this to, it'll change the fill and not the stroke. Okay? So I'm going to click on that color panel, drop that back in there, and I'm just going to click and drag around my screen, and you can notice that as soon as I do, I create a rectangle on my screen. Okay, just click and drag out a rectangle. I'm going to delete that for a second. If I click and drag out and hold down the Shift key, it will then size my rectangle tool into a perfect proportioned square. Okay? So if you're working in Photoshop, Illustrator, InDesign, this tool works the same across the board. If I just click and drag out, I can make it any length, height, width, size, what I want as a rectangle. If I hold down the Shift key, it will constrain my proportions that I have, and I am all set. I am making a rectangle that is perfectly square. To move this, we need to grab the selection tool, the move tool, and I can move that around. I can grab a center handle, a corner handle, whatever, and I can size it. If I come to the corners, I can also rotate it. While I'm rotating it, if I hold down the Shift key, it locks me in to 45-degree angles. So if I want, I can turn it and Shift key, it'll go 45 degrees. If I also come in here, boom, it'll drop it to 90 and so on. We can move it all around, and we've got things looking pretty good, okay? Now, with the rectangle tool, as I said, right now, if you look down here in the bottom of the toolbar, and if you looked over here in the color panel, the fill is the top box. That means that that is the active part of the object. So if I come down, if I can come over here, I can change. I want it red, or I want it blue, or tan, or yellow. Whatever I'm going to do, I'm going to click on that, and it's going to become that. If I click it from here, it's going to change that color, fill. Okay? If I want to change the color of the stroke, I need to then select, click on the stroke here, or click on the stroke here, and change the stroke color there. So if I fill that with brown, let's make it green, and I'm going to come up here and make it nice and big so you can see it. So I have a 10-point stroke right up here because I'm in the selection tool, so this control panel is going to do everything I want to do up here, okay? I'm going to put that back for the moment. I can move that around. If I want to, notice up here on the control bar, I just have to click on the little arrow, and it gives me the color panel. If I click over here, I just click on whatever the colors are here. But if I am over in the toolbar and I want to change the fill color, I need to just click on it, and it brings up my color swatches. I can come down in here. I can change the color by moving the eyedropper around here. I can adjust each slider by hand over here. It's all kinds of great stuff. Now again, if I click off, so I'm going to click that, put that away. Notice the last object I was on, it is now a red fill and a green stroke. So down here in my toolbar, when next object that I make, let's make another rectangle. Look what happens. Now that the first object that I drew has been changed to those colors, every object I create after this point will be a red fill and a green stroke. So on the keyboard, if I hit D on the keyboard, D means default. Did you notice what happened right over here? Down here, as soon as I hit D on the keyboard, my palette immediately jumps back to default colors, which is a white fill and a black stroke. So if I go over here and I start to click and drag with my rectangle tool, it also takes me back to the default 1-point stroke. Okay? So what I'm going to do now is I want to delete these for a second. So if I want, I could select each one, delete it, delete, select, delete, select, delete. I could do a select all, which is a Control or Command A, which will select all, or see, I do this so much with the shortcuts that you're gonna want to go under select all. I don't know how to look and delete them. I'm gonna undo that for a second, but watch this. If I take the selection tool and I draw a box around them like this, I can make sure I go all the way around them or just parts of them. It will select them so I can delete them. Or I can draw a box all the way around the outside and it will delete them also. So if it makes it easier and faster for you, you can use the selection tool to draw around them to delete them, and it works out really good. So let's go back to our shapes tool and let's go to the ellipse tool. The rounded rectangle tool and the rectangle tool are going to work extremely similar, except for the fact that they have rounded corners, and I'll talk about that a little bit more. Here's the ellipse tool. If I draw the ellipse tool, oh, now look at that. The ellipse tool is drawing out with the red and the green because it didn't get back to default. So if I hit default right now, it'll do that. Notice I had the item selected when I hit D on the keyboard. So when I have it selected when I hit D on the it's going to take whatever I have selected, which happens to be that ellipse, and change that back to default also. If I undo that, and notice it's still selected, and I unselect it, and then I hit D on the keyboard, all it's going to do is take care of the tool panel, the toolbar, and the colors, the default colors. Go back to default colors, but it did not change the ellipse that I drew because that was not selected. So it says, "Oh, you can't change that now until you select it." Along with the box, if I go back to the ellipse tool, along with the rectangle tool, if I hold down the Shift key while dragging out the ellipse, it will make it a perfectly constrained circle, which makes it then a nice constrained thing. So something else I didn't show you with the rectangle tool, but if I start drawing with the ellipse tool, just normal, it creates an ellipse any which way I want. Holding the Shift key, perfectly constrained circle, right? Now if I hold down the Alt or Option key as I draw, it draws the circle from the center out. If I hold down the Shift key with the Alt plus the Alt and Option key, it draws a perfectly constrained circle from the inside out. This sometimes works really well, that you have to have something lined up in the center, but you're not sure how large you need to make it. If you hold down the Alt or Option key as you're drawing the circle, it works really good, so you can draw from the center out. One last thing that I want to show you with the basic shapes and the setup here. I'm going to go back, hit default, and go back. I want to draw a circle. If I'm drawing the circle and I say, oh, look, if I draw a circle, now I'm done. I got to grab the move tool and move it back to the center here. That's doing a couple things. I'm drawing a circle. I got to let go. Then I got to go over, grab the move tool. Then I got to move it. I got to move it in place. That's a lot of work. So if I'm drawing this out, and as I'm drawing it out, when you're drawing, it's too late. If you're drawing, you're done. You've got to either let go and move it, or remember when I showed you if we hold down the space bar while we're doing it with any other tool, the space bar turns you into the hand tool. Well, if we're drawing, I have not taken my finger off the mouse. I'm drawing an ellipse here. I've not taken my finger off the mouse. But as I'm drawing and I have my finger still on the mouse, if I push down the space bar and not take my finger off the mouse, it allows me to move that ellipse around. Oh, that's more in the center where I want it. As soon as I take my finger off the space bar, I continue right back to drawing. And then even if I wanted to, I can hit the Shift key, and it's going to make a perfect circle. And that allows me to move my shape from where I started to where I'm going. I love that. I use that a ton. It works the same in Photoshop as it does in Illustrator, as it does in InDesign. So as you're drawing, oh, you got started drawing, I don't like where that is, hold down the space bar, move it to where you want it more or closer to that. Let go of the space bar, draw some more. And again, if you want to, I want to move it a little more, just don't let go of the mouse, hold down the space bar, Once you let go of the mouse button, it's there. You have to go move it with the Move tool. Okay? So let's take one last look here. Let's see what other tools we have here. If we got the polygon tool will create a polygon. If I hold down the space bar as I'm drawing, it does a perfect proportions. So any tool that I'm working with, this is great. The star tool will draw it out. As I'm drawing, I could do this like this. If I hold down the Shift key, it aligns it so it's straight up and down. And if I hold down the Option or Alt key as I'm drawing, notice it gives you more of a traditional star, more of an American flag star. If I do it this way, more of a fairy tale star or a children's book star is what I'm thinking of at the moment. That's probably not the greatest way. But Shift key allows me to draw it perfectly up and down, and the Alt or Option key gives me that more straight line instead of the bowed line. And then we let go and we have our star. Okay? So the tools in our tool palette, the rounded rectangle tool, let's take a look. If I draw my rounded rectangle tool, you're going to notice that we have a stroke and everything else, but how do we control the width of our corners? Like how much rotation do we want to do? If I click and drag out, it just creates it. But if I click once, it's going to give me a dialog box that says, oh, do you want to put in the height, the width, and then the corner radius? And what I like to do is if you hold the corner radius like this and you move the up and down arrows, it jumps you in increments. So if I go OK, it'll more of a rounded rectangle instead of this rectangle like so. If I come over here, grab the rectangle tool, click once, I can say, okay, I need a rectangle. I know for what the project I'm working on, I need a 2 5/8 by 3 1/4 rectangle. So I need 5 1/4. So let's say 5 and 0.25 width, and I need a height of 3, and an eighth is 1, 2, so 0.125. And when I hit OK, it's going to give me a rectangle that is exactly that size. Okay? If you notice on our rectangles here, we have handles in the corner and in the side, these big blue boxes. These are so that we can move that box however we want it. Stretch it, pull it. But only can we do these things with the Move tool, the black arrow. So if I move this around like that, I can rotate it. I'm going to go back to this. But notice in the corners, we have these brand new circles. This is brand new to the Creative Cloud within the last couple of revisions. That is one of the great advantages of the Creative Cloud, is every time they come up with a couple of additions or revisions, you get them immediately. You don't have to wait for version CS6 or CS7 or CS8. It could be a year, could be a year and a half, could be close to 2 years by the time they get you the new options. In here with this rectangle, if I move the rectangle around and I click on one of those circles and drag, look what happens. If you're looking for a rounded rectangle, it allows you to grab that rectangle and move those pieces like that. It's awesome. I really enjoy this. And it allows me to change things immediately. So especially with the rounded rectangle tool, which I hardly ever use anymore because I just draw a rectangle to the size I want. I don't worry about the rounded corners until after I get done drawing it, and then I can just click in these circles and make these things go like this. So here with the polygon tool, you're not going to see them on here, but you will on the rounded rectangle, so you can change that some more. And you don't have to click on the different areas. It's a really nice touch. So these are basic shapes in Illustrator.